My neighbor befriended me and my kids and gained my trust as a babysitter, then secretly manipulated them into believing he was their father, and tried to frame me for neglect to steal them. Now he's begging me to let him have his life back. I moved into a new neighborhood with my two kids, Angela and Justin, aged 6 and 8, about 6 months ago. On my first day there, I was greeted by my neighbor Tom. He was energetic, good with kids, and such a fast talker that when he told me he was Spanish, I didn't even get the chance to tell him I knew the language. Either way, my kids loved him, and after a few months, he was already babysitting them every time I went to work. The first red flag, however, showed up when he began making unsolicited parental suggestions. He'd tell me when to put them to sleep, what medicine to give them, what food to feed them. When I kindly asked him to stop, he said, "I'm sorry. You know I'm infertile and I almost see these kids as my own. Imagine you weren't able to have kids. You'd be doing what I am too." I felt sorry for him, and because it wasn't like he was a danger to the kids, I kept letting him babysit. But then I started noticing him start to turn my kids against me. At first it was subtle. "Tom lets us play and doesn't make us have nap time," Angela told me. "Yeah, he gives us chocolate before we eat," Justin added. At the time, I thought it was just Tom trying to seem fun, but then my kids' comments became more manipulative and disturbing. They'd say, "Tom said he'd be a better dad than you are a mom. Tom told us to listen to him and not you. Tom said he wants to be our dad but can't because of you." I felt my blood run cold. I wanted to run to his house and lay it all out, but my kids loved him, so I had to do something different. Fast forward to this past weekend. I invited him over with the intention of talking civilly and setting clear boundaries, and even went as far as preparing dinner and cleaning the house to make the environment as welcoming as possible. I never planned to tell my kids Tom was coming, but they overheard me talking about it while they were supposed to be sleeping. They got so excited, and when the day came, they kept telling me not to ruin it or make Tom angry at us. As soon as Tom walked in, he kneeled down to hug my kids as they ran up to him. He spent a whole minute making funny faces with them, but then he stood up, and as soon as our eyes met, I felt his energy shift. I invited him to come sit down at the dinner table, but he declined, asking if he could sit on the couch instead so the kids could sit on his lap. I told him the conversation I needed to have with him wasn't appropriate for Angela and Justin. He smiled and said that's nonsense, sarcastically asking me what kind of mother would force their kids to their room. He then looked at them and asked if they wanted to stay here. "Uncle Tom's right," Angela yelled. "We want to stay with him." I felt myself breaking. I wanted to just put my foot down and yell, but I couldn't, because every time I tried, Tom would steer the conversation in a way that used my own kids against me. We ended up just watching a cartoon the kids loved, and the whole time, Tom would just flash this creepy smile at me almost as if he had won. I remember it's while that was going on that he got a phone call. He stopped ruffling Justin's hair and excused himself to the hallway and picked up. I couldn't hear it too well at first, but I recognized that he was speaking Spanish. He still didn't know I spoke it, and when I heard him sarcastically mention the kids, my blood ran cold. I stood up and casually made my way over to the sink, pretending to get a glass of water, and because the door separating the kitchen and the hallway was closed, I subtly pressed my ear against it and listened in further. What I heard made my body shake and my legs go jelly. Tom was on the phone with his friend, sarcastically mocking me and mentioning how well his plan was going. He said, "Just a few more months before they're mine." He then laughed. "I've already turned them against her. Now I just have to do something to one of them and frame her. Before she knows it, CPS will be at her door, taking her kids away for neglect. And guess who they'll want to be taken in by? That's right, me, and only me." I wanted to throw up. And to make matters worse, that's not all he said. "Children are so easy to manipulate. Just offer them a surprise, say you're disappointed in them if they don't comply, and they'll tell you anything you want." I went back to the couch, face pale and fists clenched. My thoughts raced at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and when Tom came back out a minute later, smiling like nothing was wrong, I smiled back, because I had thought of something. That night, after Tom left and the kids were in bed, I sat in the dark living room trying to process what I'd heard. This man, this stranger, had systematically wormed his way into our lives with the explicit intention of taking my children from me. He'd been manipulating my kids, turning them against me, all while plotting to have them removed from my care. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. By morning, I had gone from shocked to terrified to absolutely furious. I called in sick to work and dropped the kids at school myself, making sure Tom wasn't lurking around. Then I called my sister Maya, the only person I completely trusted. "He's been doing what?" Maya practically screamed through the phone when I explained the situation. "Planning to frame me for neglect and get CPS to take my kids," I repeated, the words still not feeling real. "That psychotic she caught herself. "Sorry, okay, we need a plan. You need evidence." Maya was right. It would be my word against his, and he'd spent months building his case while I'd been oblivious. By the time I picked the kids up from school, I had ordered nanny cams for every room in the house and voice-activated recorders. Amazon Prime same-day delivery was literally going to help me save my children. While the kids did homework, I researched narcissistic manipulation and gaslighting techniques. Everything I read described Tom's behavior perfectly. He'd isolated us, undermined my authority, created dependency, and was now moving toward the final stage of his plan. I felt sick realizing how expertly he'd executed each step. That evening, Justin asked if Tom was coming over. When I said no, both kids looked disappointed. Angela actually said, "But Fridays are Tom days." Apparently, he'd established routines with my children I wasn't even aware of. I tried casually bringing up Tom. "You guys really like spending time with him, huh?" They both nodded enthusiastically. "What kind of things do you talk about when I'm not around?" Justin immediately looked uncomfortable. "Just stuff." "What kind of stuff?" I pressed gently. Angela shrugged. "Secret stuff. Tom says some things are just between us and him." My parenting alarms were blaring, but I kept my expression neutral. "You know you can always tell me anything, right? Even if someone says it's a secret?" Justin glanced at Angela, then said, "Tom says you wouldn't understand, and that you might get mad." I changed the subject, but my mind was racing. What else had he told them? What secret stuff had been happening in my own home? The nanny cams arrived while the kids were watching TV. I quickly hid them throughout the house, one disguised as a phone charger in the living room, another as a clock in the kitchen, a third hidden in a bookshelf. I installed the app on my phone to monitor the feeds. I texted Tom that night, "Kids are asking for you. Work emergency tomorrow afternoon. Any chance you could watch them for a couple hours?" His response came immediately. "Tied up until evening. Could do 7 to 9 p.m. though." Perfect. That gave me time to set up all the recording devices and prepare. Tomorrow, Tom would get the surprise of his lifetime. I wasn't going to confront him directly. That would be too dangerous given how manipulative he was. No, I needed to trick him into revealing his true intentions on camera. As I checked on the sleeping kids that night, I felt a surge of protective rage looking at their innocent faces. This man had methodically tried to steal what mattered most to me in the world. I gently brushed Justin's hair from his forehead and whispered, "Nobody is taking you from me. Not ever." The next morning, I kept things normal, making pancakes and asking about what they wanted to do over the weekend. That's when I casually mentioned, "I was thinking maybe next weekend we could drive up to Grandma's for a visit." The reaction was immediate and intense. Both kids started protesting at once. "We can't go next weekend," Angela wailed. Justin looked genuinely panicked. "Tom said he has a special surprise for us on Saturday." I froze with the spatula midair. What kind of surprise? They both shook their heads. "Another secret." "Well, we don't have to decide right now," I said lightly, but inside I was reeling. He was already planning something specific for next weekend. My timeline needed to accelerate. While the kids were at school, I went through their rooms. I hated invading their privacy, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. Under Justin's mattress, I found a cheap prepaid phone. There was only one number programmed into it, Tom's. The text history showed messages instructing Justin to call if mommy acts weird, or call if she tries to take you anywhere far away. I found an identical phone hidden in Angela's favorite stuffed animal. I took photos of everything but left the phones where I found them. I didn't want to tip Tom off that I was onto him. I called the school next and spoke with both kids' teachers. Justin's teacher mentioned that he'd become more withdrawn lately. Angela said she'd been talking about Uncle Tom constantly. Then came the bombshell. Apparently Tom had picked them up from school twice in the past month, claiming to be my authorized childcare provider. I immediately updated their pickup authorization list, explicitly removing Tom's name and informing the front office he was under no circumstances allowed to take my children. I added that I was the only person authorized for pickup until further notice. When the kids came home that afternoon, I tried again to casually ask about their relationship with Tom. Justin immediately became defensive. "Why do you keep asking about Tom? Don't you like him anymore?" Angela's lower lip trembled. "If you make Tom go away, I'll hate you forever." I changed tactics and suggested we make cookies together. While we mixed the dough, Angela mentioned that Tom had been teaching them special games. When I asked what kind of games, she immediately clammed up, exchanging a look with Justin. "Secret games," Justin said firmly. My stomach twisted into knots, but I kept my expression neutral. "That sounds fun. Maybe we could play games with Aunt Maya soon too." Later, I called my friend Layla, who works in family social services. Without naming names, I explained the situation, describing what I'd overheard and the changes in my kids' behavior. "Without solid evidence, it's your word against his," she warned me. "And if the kids are already alienated from you, their statements might actually support his claims." "So what do I do?" I asked desperately. "You need him to reveal his true intentions on record," she said. "And you need to document everything. Your positive interactions with the kids, their meals, their schedules, everything to counter any claims of neglect." That evening, when Tom arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, I was ready. The cameras were recording. Voice recorders were hidden throughout the house. I deliberately appeared distracted and stressed, mentioning work problems and sighing heavily. Tom immediately stepped into the supportive friend role, but I caught the calculated look in his eyes as he surveyed the kids' appearance, the state of the living room. "The kids look a bit neglected," he said with carefully crafted concern. "Have they had dinner?" "They had snacks," I mumbled. "I was going to order pizza." He clicked his tongue disapprovingly, loud enough for the kids to hear. "They need proper nutrition, not junk food." I didn't rise to the bait. Instead, I mentioned casually, "By the way, I'm thinking of moving us closer to my parents. My mom offered to help with childcare while I work longer hours." Tom's face darkened momentarily before he recovered. "Moving? That would be so disruptive for the children. They're just getting settled here. It would make things easier financially," I pressed. "Let's discuss this privately," he suggested, steering me toward the kitchen. Once there, away from the kids, his mask slipped. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. "You're ruining everything." Got him, I thought, knowing the kitchen recorder was capturing every word. I kept my face fearful and confused. "I don't understand why you're upset," I said. "It's just an idea my mom suggested." "Because these kids need stability," he said, quickly composing himself. "And I'm here to help. Your parents live what, 2 hours away? The kids would have to change schools, lose all their friends, lose me." The proprietary way he said, "lose me," sent chills down my spine. But I had him talking now, and I needed more. "I didn't realize you were so invested in our lives," I said carefully. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course I am. Those kids mean everything to me. Not your kids, those kids, like they already belong to him." I decided to push him a little further. "It's just that Angela and Justin are my children, and I need to make the best decisions for them." Tom's face twitched slightly. "Of course they're your children. Technically." That single word, technically, made my blood run cold. I kept my expression neutral despite wanting to slap him. "I should get going," I said, pretending to check the time. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." As Tom left, he hugged the kids extra long. Justin actually cried when he said goodbye, like he was leaving forever. I overheard Tom whisper to Angela, "Remember what we talked about?" She nodded solemnly. After they went to bed, I reviewed the kitchen recording. Tom's "you're ruining everything" comment was damning, but not explicitly incriminating enough. I needed more concrete evidence of his plan. The next morning, I casually mentioned finding their secret phones while cleaning their rooms. Instead of confessing, Both kids looked panicked and claimed they'd found them. I realized how thoroughly Tom had coached them to lie to me. Even when caught red-handed, they stuck to whatever story he'd given them. I tried showing them old family photos from before Tom came into our lives. "Remember how much fun we had at the beach last summer?" I asked gently. Angela frowned. "Tom showed us different pictures of you." My heart skipped. "What pictures?" "Pictures where you looked mean," Justin said quietly. I was stunned. Had Tom been showing my kids doctored photos of me? I asked to see these pictures, but they claimed Tom kept them at his house. Another manipulation tactic, creating false memories and altered perceptions. I called Maya again, and she agreed to come stay with us for a few days. Having backup felt essential as I gathered more evidence. Plus, I needed someone to witness Tom's behavior firsthand. She arrived that afternoon, and the kids were excited to see their aunt. We were making dinner when Tom showed up unannounced, carrying gift bags. "Surprise visit," he announced cheerfully, not even acknowledging how inappropriate it was to just appear without warning. The kids ran to him like he was Santa Claus. He handed them each a wrapped package. "Not now," I said firmly. "We're about to have dinner." "Oh, let them open them," Tom said with a dismissive wave. "It's just something small." The kids immediately tore into the packages, completely ignoring my instruction. Maya watched the whole interaction with wide eyes, finally seeing what I'd been describing. After the kids went to bed, Maya was visibly shaken. "Holy crap, you weren't exaggerating. The way he undermined you right in front of me was so blatant. Should we confront him together?" she suggested. I shook my head. "If we confront him directly, he'll just become more secretive. We need to catch him revealing his true plan." We developed a different approach. Maya would pretend to be concerned about my parenting and sympathetic to Tom. She'd try to gain his trust and get him to open up about his intentions. The next day, Maya accidentally bumped into Tom at the local coffee shop. She struck up a conversation, mentioning she was in town visiting me and the kids. "How are they doing?" Tom asked, immediately focusing on the children rather than me. "Honestly, I'm a bit worried," Maya improvised. "My sister seems so overwhelmed lately." Tom was initially suspicious of her sudden interest, but warmed up when she continued expressing concerns about my parenting. She suggested the three of us get drinks that weekend to discuss the situation. When she told me about this later, I agreed too quickly to the drink plan. When Tom texted to confirm, his message had an edge of suspicion. I had to backtrack, responding that I wasn't sure it was a good idea, but would try to make it work. Playing hard to get seemed to reassure him. That Saturday, we met at a local bar. I purposely arrived 15 minutes late, appearing flustered and disorganized. Tom immediately started listing his concerns about my mental stability to Maya. "She's just not the same person lately," he said, shaking his head sadly. "The kids tell me things." Maya skillfully steered the conversation toward his childcare techniques. "You seem to have such a special bond with them. How did you develop that?" Tom puffed up with pride and began explaining his approach. After a few drinks, he became less guarded. "Children need structure," he explained. "When their primary caregiver is unstable, they look for security elsewhere. I simply positioned myself as that security." "And how did you do that?" Maya asked innocently. "It's about creating contrast," he said, leaning in. "If mom says no to something simple, I say yes. If she's tired and short-tempered, I'm endlessly patient. Eventually, they start coming to me first." I gripped my glass so hard I thought it might shatter. He was openly admitting to systematically turning my children against me. Maya managed to record parts of this conversation on her phone, but the bar was too noisy for clear audio. We needed a better environment to get clean recordings. "We should continue this conversation somewhere quieter," Maya suggested. "Maybe dinner at the house next week?" Tom readily agreed. As we left the bar, he placed his hand on my lower back in a possessive gesture that made my skin crawl. The following days were tense. I prepared for our dinner by setting up additional recording devices throughout the house. While I was hiding one behind some books, Justin walked in. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to the small black device in my hand. My heart raced. "It's a special timer for cooking," I lied, hating that I was now the one being dishonest. "I'm trying some new recipes." He seemed to accept this explanation, but I was more careful hiding the rest. I couldn't risk Tom finding out what I was doing. The night of the dinner arrived. Tom showed up with an expensive bottle of wine and immediately suggested we loosen up with a drink. I noticed him watching closely as I sipped mine, so I secretly poured most of it into a nearby plant when he wasn't looking. Something about his insistence made me suspicious. Was he trying to impair my judgment? Maya skillfully brought up the topic of my parenting struggles again. Tom started elaborating on his concerns, becoming more candid as the evening progressed. "The children confide in me," he said. "They tell me things they're afraid to tell their mother." Suddenly, Angela burst into tears. "I don't want to go away from Tom," she wailed. I froze. "What do you mean, sweetie? No one's going away." Angela looked at Tom, then back at me. "But if you keep being mean to Tom, he can't take us to his special place." My blood ran cold. "What special place?" Tom quickly intervened. "I mentioned taking them to the Children's Museum sometime. That's all." But Angela's outburst confirmed my fears. Tom had been having private conversations with my children about taking them away from me. I comforted Angela while struggling to maintain my composure. Tom used this moment to twist the narrative again. "See how you're making her feel guilty for expressing her emotions?" he said quietly. "That's emotional manipulation." Maya, who had been recording this exchange while pretending to check messages on her phone, caught this perfect example of psychological projection. Tom was accusing me of exactly what he was doing himself. After reviewing Maya's footage later that night, we found Tom had revealed enough of his concerning behavior to raise red flags, but nothing explicitly illegal. We needed more. I decided to call his bluff. The next morning, I texted Tom, "After last night, I'm considering therapy for the kids. They seem to have a confusing attachment to you that might need professional guidance." His response was immediate. "I'd be happy to help find a good therapist." I know several who specialize in children. Thanks, but I've already selected one and scheduled appointments for next week, I replied. This clearly rattled him. He called within minutes, insisting that involving outsiders was unnecessary and potentially harmful to the children. They're just going through an adjustment period, he argued. Therapy might make them feel like something's wrong with them. I pretended to reconsider. Maybe you're right. By the way, my parents are coming to visit next week. They'll be staying with us for a while. This news clearly panicked him. How long will they be here? When do they arrive exactly? He pressed. Not sure yet, I said vaguely. Could be a week or two. After hanging up, Maya and I analyzed his reaction. He's afraid of your parents witnessing his manipulation, she concluded. Outside observers threaten his control. The next day, I discovered Tom had given Justin a smartphone for emergencies. When I confronted Justin about it, his response was clearly rehearsed. Tom says I need it because sometimes you don't answer your phone, he recited mechanically. It's for my safety. Rather than confiscating it and triggering more resistance, I calmly explained that gifts like phones needed parental approval first. I let him keep it for now, but gave him extra screen time on his tablet to distract him while I checked the phone later. That night, after Justin fell asleep, I examined the new phone. The text messages between him and Tom were disturbing. Tom: remember our special plan if mommy tries to take you away? Justin: yes, I remember. Tom: good boy. Don't tell anyone about this phone. I took screenshots of everything but left the phone intact. The next morning, I texted Tom from my phone. I appreciate your concern for the kids, but please don't give them expensive gifts, especially electronics, without discussing it with me first. Just trying to keep them safe, he replied with a smiley face emoji that seemed sinister given what I now knew. Maya and I decided to accelerate our plan. She approached Tom again, this time pretending to be completely on his side. I'm really worried about my sister's stability, she told him over coffee. The way she's been acting lately seems erratic. Tom became suspiciously cautious, studying Maya's face. What specifically concerns you? Maya had to backtrack and provide examples to make her concern seem genuine. She's been forgetful, emotional. The house is messier than usual. I'm just worried about the kids. This seemed to satisfy him. Eventually, he confided that he planned to document evidence of neglect over the next few weeks, though he was frustratingly vague about specifics. That evening during bath time, I carefully checked both kids for any unusual marks or bruises. Angela noticed my scrutiny. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked. Just checking for mosquito bites, I said casually. They've been bad this summer. The following day, I received a call from the school that made my heart drop. Justin had arrived with a suspicious bruise on his arm. When questioned by his teacher, he had claimed he fell at mom's house. The school was required to document it. I raced to the school, examining the bruise myself. It was on the back of his upper arm, not a location typical for an accidental fall. I asked Justin how he got it, and he repeated the same story, avoiding eye contact. I immediately took him to our family doctor, Dr. Chen. She examined the bruise carefully. This doesn't look consistent with a fall, she said quietly. The shape and placement suggest it was caused by someone gripping his arm forcefully. I need you to document that in his medical record, I said urgently. And I need a copy of that documentation. Dr. Chen looked confused by my insistence. I felt forced to partially explain the situation, which made me sound paranoid. Nevertheless, she thoroughly documented her findings and gave me a copy of the report. That evening, Tom texted asking if he could take the kids to the park. I politely declined, saying we had family plans. 20 minutes later, he showed up at our door anyway. Surprise, he announced when I opened the door. The kids ran to him excitedly. We're actually having a family night, I said firmly. Ooh, can Tom join? Angela asked. Not tonight, sweetie, I replied. Tom crouched down to Angela's level and whispered something in her ear. Her face crumpled and she burst into tears. You're the worst mom ever, she screamed, running to her room. Justin stood there uncertainly, torn between following his sister and staying. You see how upset they get when you keep them from having fun? Tom said quietly. I'm just trying to give them some normalcy. They're my children, and we have plans, I said, blocking the doorway. Please respect our family time. Tom eventually left, but not before giving me a look that chilled me to the bone. After he was gone, I tried talking to both kids about what had happened, but they were completely unresponsive, staring at the floor and refusing to engage. That night, I called Maya in tears. The kids are like strangers. They won't even talk to me in my own home. That's exactly what he wants, she reminded me. He's deliberately creating this division. Remember, this isn't about the kids being mad at you. It's about Tom's manipulation. The next day, Maya suggested we needed more drastic action. We need to set up a situation where Tom will fully reveal his intentions. I was hesitant. I don't want to put the kids in any kind of danger. They won't be, she assured me. We'll make sure they're safe with your parents while we confront him. We developed a plan. I would tell the kids we were visiting Grandma for the weekend, ensuring they were safely away. Then we would confront Tom with the evidence we had gathered so far. When I told the kids about visiting Grandma, they immediately became agitated. I pretended to leave the room but doubled back silently, catching them both frantically texting on their secret phones. I quietly monitored Tom's response through the nanny cam in Justin's room. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was Tom, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. I just wanted to check in, he said casually. The kids mentioned you're taking them out of town? Just for the weekend, I replied. They haven't seen my parents in months. Kids need stability, he insisted. Traveling can be disruptive to their routine. It's just a weekend visit, I repeated. I'm concerned, he said, his voice hardening. Your behavior lately has been erratic, pulling them out of school, making sudden trips. If this continues, I I might need to report my concerns to the appropriate authorities. There it was, the threat I'd been waiting for. I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. Are you threatening to call CPS because I'm taking my children to visit their grandparents? I'm just concerned about their well-being, he said smoothly, as any responsible adult would be. I recorded this entire conversation, finally capturing his controlling behavior and veiled threats on tape. When I played it for Maya, she was encouraged but pointed out he was still being careful with his explicit words. We need him to believe you're actually leaving town permanently, she suggested. That should trigger a bigger reaction. The next day, we put our plan into action. Maya helped me pack several boxes and place them visibly in the front yard. We made sure to label some kitchen and kids' toys, obvious moving boxes. Tom drove by 3 times before finally stopping. I pretended not to notice his car until he approached. Spring cleaning? He asked, gesturing to the boxes. Actually, I found a great job opportunity in Colorado, I improvised. Better pay, better schools for the kids. Tom's mask slipped completely, his face contorted with anger, and he stepped closer to me. You can't just take them away, he hissed. Those children need stability. They need me. They're my children, I replied calmly. For now, he said, his voice eerily controlled despite his obvious rage. But trust me, if you try to leave, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are. Documentation of neglect doesn't just disappear. We were interrupted by my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, walking by with her dog. Tom immediately switched back to his charming persona, commenting on the beautiful weather. But as he left, he gave me a chilling parting shot. We'll talk later. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I was in the kitchen when I noticed a shadow outside the window. I carefully peeked through the blinds and saw Tom standing in our backyard, trying to look into the windows. My hands shaking, I turned on the back porch light and opened the door. What are you doing? I demanded. He seemed startled but quickly recovered. I was just checking on the kids' welfare. You seemed upset earlier. It's 10:30 at night. Get off my property or I'm calling the police, I warned. He held up his hands in mock surrender and backed away, but his eyes were cold. Just being a concerned neighbor. That encounter convinced me we needed to accelerate our timeline. The next morning, I drove the kids to my parents' house 2 hours away. About halfway there, I noticed a blue sedan following us at a distance. I took several random turns, and the car continued to follow. It was Tom. I called Maya in a panic. He's following us to my parents' house. Stay calm, she advised. Take an unexpected route. Go to a police station if you need to. I made a sudden turn into a shopping center and drove around to the back. When I emerged on the other side, the blue sedan was gone. I took a convoluted route the rest of the way, constantly checking my rearview mirror. After safely dropping the kids with my parents and explaining enough of the situation to put them on high alert, Maya and I returned home to implement the final phase of our plan. But when we arrived, I immediately knew something was wrong. The front door was slightly ajar. We cautiously entered to find the house had been searched. Drawers were open, papers scattered. Someone had been looking for something. Tom, I whispered, feeling violated and terrified. We immediately called the police. Officer Reynolds arrived quickly and documented the break-in. There were no signs of forced entry. Tom must have had a key made at some point. Without more evidence of his intentions, we can only charge him with trespassing if we can prove it was him, Officer Reynolds explained. After he left, Maya came up with a new approach. Let's use this break-in to our advantage. I'll call Tom, pretending to be panicked about the police involvement. She put the call on speaker so I could hear. Tom, someone broke into the house, she said, her voice convincingly distressed. The police were just here. I'm freaking out. Tom's response was chillingly calm. This is actually perfect, he said smoothly. What do you mean? Maya asked. Think about it. Unstable mother, leaves her house unsecured, goes on impulsive trips. This all builds the case, he said. Maya caught my eye, both of us realizing what he meant. The break-in wasn't just to search for something. It was part of his plan to make me look negligent. What case? Maya pressed. Let's just say your sister might not be the most suitable guardian for those children, Tom replied. Sometimes kids need to be removed from unsafe situations. After hanging up, we had our smoking gun, Tom explicitly stating his intention to have my children removed from my care. We set up one final trap. Maya called Tom back. I've been thinking about what you said. I'm worried about the kids too. Maybe we should meet to discuss how to make sure they're safe. He agreed to come over that evening. What he didn't know was that we'd invited Officer Reynolds back, along with my friend Layla from Child Welfare Services. They waited in the spare bedroom while Maya and I sat in the living room. Tom arrived looking confident. When he saw it was just Maya and me, he relaxed visibly. So, you wanted to talk about the children's welfare? Yes, I said calmly. I'm concerned about someone who's been manipulating my children, breaking into my home, and plotting to have them taken away from me. Tom's smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Pronto serán míos, I said, quoting his Spanish phone conversation. Soon they will be mine. The color drained from his face. You don't speak Spanish. Studied abroad in Spain for a year, I replied. Surprise. I played the recording of him threatening to build a case against me, followed by the kitchen recording where he'd slipped up saying I was ruining everything. As the evidence mounted, Tom's charming facade crumbled completely. He stood up abruptly. This proves nothing. No one will believe you over me. Those kids love me more than they love you. That's because you systematically manipulated them, I said, giving them secret phones, teaching them to lie to me, showing them doctored photos. You have no proof of any of that, he sneered. That's when Officer Reynolds and Layla emerged from the bedroom, having heard everything. Actually, she does have proof, Officer Reynolds said, and you just provided more of it. Tom tried to leave but found his path blocked. This is ridiculous. I was just trying to help those children. By breaking into their mother's home? Officer Reynolds asked. By planning to make false reports to child services? As Tom was being arrested for stalking, breaking and entering, and attempted custodial interference, he looked at me with pure hatred. Those kids will never believe you over me, he snarled. I'm the only one who truly cares about them. I watched as they took him away, feeling relieved but also devastated. The hardest part was still ahead, helping my children understand what had happened and rebuilding our trust. When I called my parents to tell them it was safe to bring the kids home, My mom reported that Angela and Justin had been asking for Tom constantly. They seem to think you're keeping them from him deliberately, she said worriedly. I am, I sighed, but not for the reasons they think. How do you explain to a 6- and 8-year-old that the adult they've come to trust has been manipulating them? How do you help them understand concepts like gaslighting and psychological abuse? The next phase would be the most difficult, healing my family from Tom's calculated damage. After Tom's arrest, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. When I brought the kids home from my parents, their reaction to the news about Tom was heartbreaking. You're lying, Justin shouted when I gently explained that Tom had done some bad things and wouldn't be coming around anymore. Angela burst into tears. You're just jealous because we love him more than you. Their words cut deep, but I reminded myself they were victims too. Tom had spent months poisoning their minds against me. This wouldn't be fixed overnight. I contacted a child psychologist who specialized in cases of emotional manipulation. Dr. Ramirez was compassionate but honest with me. Children this age don't have the capacity to understand manipulative tactics, she explained. Right now, they simply feel like someone they loved has been taken away, and they're blaming you. How do I fix this? I asked desperately. Slowly, she advised. We start with rebuilding trust, not by trying to convince them about Tom. That will come later. The kids initially refused to talk to Dr. Ramirez. Justin sat with his arms crossed, answering questions with silent shrugs. Angela would only communicate through her stuffed animals, but Dr. Ramirez was patient, using play therapy and art to slowly get them to open up. After their third session, Dr. Ramirez showed me a drawing Justin had made, a picture of Tom giving them candy and toys while a scary-looking figure, presumably me, stood in the background with angry eyes. Tom played a special game with them, Dr. Ramirez explained gently. He would reward them with treats whenever they reported negative things about you, and he would punish them by withdrawing affection if they said positive things. I felt physically ill. They were being conditioned. She nodded grimly. Classic manipulation technique. He essentially trained them to view you negatively, and him positively. The road to recovery was painful and slow. There were nights when Angela would scream that she hated me, that I was mean for taking Tom away. Justin became withdrawn, refusing to engage with me beyond necessary communication. Just when we seemed to be making progress, I discovered Tom had found a way to maintain contact. A letter arrived for the children, sent through a mutual acquaintance in the neighborhood. It was filled with subtle manipulation, telling them he missed them, that he was being unfairly kept away from them, and that someday they would understand the truth. I immediately got a restraining order prohibiting all forms of contact with my family, but Tom was persistent. A few weeks later, Angela came home from school with a new bracelet. Where did you get that? I asked casually. The new helper in our classroom gave it to me, she replied. She said it was a secret present. My alarm bells went off. I visited the school the next day and discovered one of Tom's cousins had recently volunteered as a classroom aide. I hadn't even known he had family in the area, another detail he'd concealed. When confronted, the cousin claimed ignorance about any restraining order. The principal agreed to remove her from Angela's classroom, but explained they couldn't ban her from the school entirely without more evidence of malicious intent. Meanwhile, Tom's case was moving through the legal system, but much more slowly than I'd hoped. His lawyer kept pushing for delays, painting Tom as a concerned friend who had only been trying to protect children he was worried about. Maya and I worked with the prosecutor, organizing our evidence and preparing for court. We discovered some of our recordings might be inadmissible due to consent laws in our state, which was a setback. We had to focus on strengthening the testimony about the break-in and the documented pattern of manipulation. As the court date approached, Tom's defense team requested that the children be interviewed, claiming they would support his version of events. I was horrified at the thought of them being involved in the proceedings, but we compromised on a private interview with a court-appointed child advocate. The advocate, Ms. Winters, was experienced and gentle with the kids. The interviews seemed to be going well until she showed Justin a photo of our family, including Tom. Justin suddenly became withdrawn, repeating, "I'm not supposed to tell the secret." Ms. Winters recognized this as a sign of coaching and documented it in her report to the court. This was a turning point in the case, evidence that the children had been instructed to keep secrets, a classic red flag in manipulation cases. Tom's lawyer attempted to paint me as paranoid and unstable, but the evidence of his systematic isolation tactics was compelling. The judge ordered a complete psychological evaluation of Tom. The results were revealing. Not only did the evaluation show concerning patterns of narcissistic behavior, but background checks revealed Tom had fabricated his entire backstory. He wasn't Spanish at all. He'd affected the accent and learned the language specifically as part of his persona. He'd also used 3 different names in the past decade. What we still couldn't figure out was why he'd targeted my family specifically. Maya suggested doing deeper research into his past, beyond what the police had uncovered. Her investigation led to a disturbing discovery. Tom had attempted similar behavior with 2 other single mothers in different cities. In each case, he'd inserted himself into the family's life, alienated the children from their mother, and then disappeared when his manipulation was discovered. But we couldn't find any official reports filed against him. These women were probably too embarrassed or scared to report him, Maya reasoned, or maybe they just wanted to move on with their lives after he left. We managed to contact one of these mothers, Eliza, who agreed to meet with me. She was clearly terrified, constantly checking over her shoulder during our coffee shop meeting. We moved to my car for more privacy, where she finally opened up. He called himself Daniel when I knew him, she explained, her hands shaking as she showed me a photo. It was undeniably Tom, though with different hair and glasses. He almost succeeded in getting custody of my son. According to Eliza, Daniel had manipulated her child so thoroughly that the boy had started making false allegations of abuse against her. When Child Services investigated, Daniel had presented himself as a stable father figure, offering to take temporary custody. I realized what was happening just in time, she said. I packed up and fled the state in the middle of the night. We've been living under the radar for years, afraid he would find us. Eliza's testimony provided the pattern evidence we needed. Now we could show Tom's behavior wasn't a one-time misunderstanding, but a calculated predatory pattern. The prosecutor was thrilled with this new information, but cautioned that Tom's lawyer would try to discredit Eliza as an unreliable witness, without concrete documentation. "We need something that ties all these cases together," she advised. I spent hours reviewing all our recordings, looking for any clue that might connect Tom to his previous identities. Nothing stood out. Then Maya suggested focusing on his phone, the one constant across all his personas. The prosecutor subpoenaed Tom's phone records, revealing multiple burner phones but one consistent number he'd kept across his various identities. That number regularly called a residential facility in another state. When investigators contacted the facility, they refused to provide information, citing patient confidentiality. We had to get a specific court order to access the records. What we discovered was the missing piece of the puzzle. Tom had been a patient at a psychiatric facility for delusions related to parenthood. He had been released years ago when he appeared to improve, but his obsession with saving children had a clinical basis. With this evidence, the case against Tom became much stronger. His defense team pivoted to claiming mental health issues reduced his culpability, but the prosecutor emphasized the calculated, methodical nature of his actions across multiple families. As the legal case progressed, I focused on helping my children heal. Justin had a complete meltdown at school one day, screaming that he wanted to live with Tom. I realized we needed more intensive family therapy. Our new therapist, Dr. Ramirez, suggested bringing in objects the children associated with Tom to discuss their feelings. When we did this exercise, Angela revealed something shocking. Tom had given them a special phone to call him if I ever took them away. This was in addition to the prepaid phones I'd already found months earlier. After some gentle coaxing, Angela retrieved it from inside a hollowed-out book on her shelf. The text messages on this phone were disturbing. "Tom, remember, if your mom ever tries to take you away, use this phone to call me and I'll come rescue you. Tom, don't tell your mom about our plan. She wouldn't understand that we're meant to be a family. Tom, I'll always be there for you in ways your mom can't be." But the most shocking message revealed Tom's ultimate lie. "Someday I'll tell you the truth about why I couldn't be your dad from the beginning. Your mom kept me away, but I never stopped loving you." He had told my children he was their biological father. I sat across from Dr. Ramirez, stunned into silence. The phone with those messages felt radioactive in my hand. Tom had told my children he was their biological father. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Their fierce loyalty, their resistance to leaving him, their confusion about why I was keeping them away from him. "I need to tell them the truth right now," I blurted out. Dr. Ramirez held up her hand. "I understand that impulse, but we need to approach this carefully. This is a fundamental deception that's become part of their reality. Challenging it too abruptly could be traumatic." She was right, but it killed me to let my kids believe this lie for even one more day. We developed a gentler approach, starting with establishing who their actual father was through photos and memories, without directly contradicting Tom's claims yet. During our next session, I brought family albums showing the kids as babies with their real dad before our divorce. Angela seemed confused by these images, and Justin became agitated. "These are fake," he insisted. "Tom said you would try to trick us with fake pictures." Of course he had. Tom had prepared for every possibility, even anticipating I might try to prove he wasn't their father. Dr. Ramirez carefully asked, "What did Tom tell you about being your dad?" Angela's answer broke my heart. "He said he had to go away before we were born because mommy was angry with him, but he always wanted to be with us, and now he came back to rescue us." Justin nodded. "He said you've been lying to us our whole lives." The irony was suffocating. After several more sessions, Dr. Ramirez suggested involving their actual father in the process. My ex-husband Todd had been minimally involved since the divorce, but when I explained the situation, he was horrified and agreed to help immediately. The first video call with Todd was awkward. The kids were suspicious and hostile, having been convinced he was some kind of imposter, but he knew details about their birth and early childhood that only their real father could know. Slowly, confusion began to replace certainty in their expressions. It took weeks of gentle therapy for the truth to finally penetrate. Tom was not their father. He had lied to them, completely and deliberately, to steal them away from me. Angela was the first to break down. "But why would he lie about that?" she sobbed. "People don't lie about being someone's daddy." Justin's realization was quieter, but deeper. He stopped talking altogether for 3 days, processing this betrayal from someone he had trusted completely. When he finally spoke, he simply asked, "Did Tom lie about everything?" Dr. Ramirez helped us compile a list of Tom's truths and actual truths, working through each manipulation systematically. It was painful, messy work. Some days we made progress. Other days it felt like we were moving backward. Meanwhile, Tom's trial date was approaching. His lawyer tried every delay tactic possible, but eventually, we found ourselves in the courthouse. I testified first, laying out the entire timeline of manipulation. Seeing Tom sitting there at the defense table, watching me with those calculated eyes, made my skin crawl. The defense attorney tried painting me as paranoid and unstable during cross-examination. "Isn't it possible you misinterpreted my client's genuine concern for your children?" she asked repeatedly in different ways. I stuck to the facts, referring to the evidence rather than my emotions. Maya testified next, describing Tom's confessions about how he deliberately positioned himself as a contrast to me. The prosecutor played the recordings where Tom admitted to turning my children against me. Eliza's testimony about her similar experience was powerful. When she identified Tom as Daniel, the man who had attempted the same manipulation with her family years earlier, I watched several jurors' expressions harden. The evidence from the psychiatric facility explained Tom's fixation, but didn't excuse his actions. The prosecution emphasized the difference between having mental health issues and methodically executing a plan to steal someone's children. Justin had to testify in a closed session with just the judge present. Dr. Ramirez and I prepared him as best we could, but halfway through his testimony, he became confused about what was real and what wasn't. The judge ended the session early, having seen enough evidence of manipulation. When Tom took the stand in his own defense, his carefully constructed facade began to crumble under questioning. The prosecutor methodically walked through each step step of his manipulation, from inserting himself into our lives to conditioning my children to report negative things about me. Why did you tell these children you were their biological father when you knew that was false? The prosecutor asked. Tom's composure finally broke. Because I deserve to be their father, he snapped. I would have been better for them than she ever was. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Tom was sentenced to 5 years for stalking, breaking and entering, custodial interference, and child exploitation. I felt relieved but not victorious. No prison sentence could undo the damage he'd caused. While Tom awaited transfer to prison, we focused on healing. The kids still had nightmares and separation anxiety. I created new bedtime routines with special worry stones they could hold whenever they felt scared or confused. I installed a whiteboard in each of their rooms where they could write down questions or concerns that came up during the day, which we'd address together each evening. I considered changing schools to give them a fresh start, but Dr. Ramirez suggested maintaining stability was more important. We compromised by keeping the same schools but ensuring their teachers understood the situation. Angela seemed to bounce back faster than Justin. She returned to her chatty self, becoming interested in her old activities again. But then I discovered she was hiding her true feelings, pretending to be fine because she thought that's what I wanted. I need to be strong for you, Mommy, she confessed one night. I started a mother-daughter journal where she could write down her true thoughts and feelings without saying them out loud. Some of her entries broke my heart. Sometimes I still miss Tom even though he was a liar, and I feel stupid for believing him. Justin's struggle was more visible. He had angry outbursts followed by periods of complete withdrawal. Traditional talk therapy wasn't working well for him, so we found an art therapist who helped him express his confusion and betrayal through painting. His early artwork featured dark scribbles and torn paper, but gradually colors began to appear. 3 months after the trial, I received notice that Tom was filing an appeal. The kids immediately regressed when they sensed my anxiety. Justin started wetting the bed again, and Angela became clingy, refusing to go to school. Our lawyer assured us the appeal was based on technicalities rather than new evidence, and the conviction would likely stand. We used our established coping mechanisms to weather this setback. During one particularly difficult evening discussion, Angela surprised me with her insight. Tom can't trick us anymore, Mom, she said firmly. We know about his lies now. Justin nodded in agreement, though he remained quieter about his feelings. 6 months after Tom's conviction, I ran into Ben at a school fundraiser. He was a single dad with a daughter in Angela's class. We started talking while volunteering at the bake sale table and found an easy rhythm to our conversation. When he suggested coffee sometime, my immediate reaction was panic. I'd met Tom through my kids. He'd used them to get close to me. How could I ever trust anyone near them again? I declined Ben's invitation initially, but we kept bumping into each other at school events. He was patient and never pushy. After 6 months of casual conversations in public settings, I finally felt comfortable enough to consider introducing him to the kids. Our first play date was at a public park with his daughter Lily. I watched Ben like a hawk, analyzing every interaction he had with Angela and Justin. He must have felt my scrutiny but never commented on it. Instead, he simply played catch with the kids, made awful dad jokes, and respected their boundaries completely. Justin had a momentary panic attack when he saw Ben helping me prepare snacks one afternoon. His breathing became rapid, and he froze in the doorway. What if he tries to take us away like Tom? He whispered. Instead of dismissing his fear, I sat down at his level. That's a really important question, Justin. Let's talk about it. We discussed the differences between Tom's behavior and Ben's, and I reminded him that no adult would ever separate us again. The fact that Justin could verbalize his fear rather than shutting down represented enormous progress. We were healing, slowly but surely. Angela, meanwhile, developed an unexpected interest in Spanish culture and language. This concerned me at first. Was she trying to maintain a connection to Tom? Dr. Ramirez suggested that Angela might be attempting to reclaim something Tom had tainted. Rather than discourage her, we explored Spanish culture together through cooking, music, and children's books, creating new positive associations. Tom's appeal was denied 8 months after his conviction, providing some final legal closure. Still, I worried about his eventual release. I set up safety protocols with the kids' schools and made sure they understood exactly which adults were authorized to interact with them. We established code words and safety plans, not to frighten them, but to empower them. The psychiatric evaluation Tom received in prison recommended extended treatment, which meant he might eventually be transferred to a mental health facility rather than serving his full sentence in prison. This possibility required us to update our safety precautions and legal protections. A year after starting therapy, Dr. Ramirez suggested we were ready to reduce our sessions to monthly check-ins. I panicked at the thought of losing this crucial support system, but we gradually decreased the frequency while ensuring additional appointments were available when needed. During one of our evening discussions, Justin asked a question that broke my heart. Was it my fault Tom tricked us? Was I too friendly with him? I gathered both kids for an immediate family meeting. Nothing that happened was your fault, I told them firmly. Adults are responsible for their own actions, never children. Tom made choices to lie and manipulate, and that had nothing to do with anything you did or didn't do. 2 years after Tom's arrest, I saved enough for a down payment on a small house in a new neighborhood about 30 minutes away. During the moving process, Angela found a stuffed bear Tom had given her tucked in the back of her closet. She held it up uncertainly. Should I throw this away? Rather than deciding for her, we created a special ceremony. We laid out items associated with Tom, the toys he'd given them, photos with him, and the kids decided individually which objects to leave behind, and which, if any, to bring to our new beginning. They chose to discard everything except one small bracelet Angela had received before Tom's manipulation began. In our new home, both kids initially checked the locks and security system obsessively every night. I didn't discourage this behavior, understanding their need for control and safety. Gradually, their hypervigilance faded. I knew Justin was finally feeling secure when, about 3 months after moving in, He left his bedroom door open while sleeping for the first time in years. Ben and his daughter Lily became regular visitors at our new house. The kids accepted his presence without the suspicion they'd initially shown. When he taught Justin to change a bike tire or listen to Angela practice her reading, there was no ulterior motive, no manipulation, just simple kindness and genuine interest. Our journey isn't over. There are still difficult days when memories resurface unexpectedly. Justin sometimes gets quiet and withdrawn on the anniversary of Tom's arrest. Angela occasionally asks questions about why people lie and whether we can ever really know if someone is telling the truth. These are heavy questions for young children, but they're asking them from a place of growing strength rather than fear. We've developed tools and trust to face these challenges together. We talk openly about what happened while focusing on moving forward. What Tom tried to destroy, our family bond, has become stronger through our shared healing. The kids and I have movie nights where we build pillow forts and eat too much popcorn. We've started a tradition of Saturday morning pancakes with ridiculous toppings. Justin joined a soccer team, and Angela takes art classes. Normal kid stuff that once seemed impossible during the darkness of Tom's manipulation. I still have the recordings and evidence we gathered, locked in a fireproof safe. I hope we never need them again, but their presence is a reminder that I'll always protect my children, no matter what. Yesterday, while tucking Angela in, she whispered, "I'm glad Tom didn't win, Mommy." "Me too, sweetheart," I replied, smoothing her hair. "We're the winners," Justin added from his doorway. "Our team, that's what home really is. Not just a place, but the safety and love we create with each other. It's something no manipulator, no matter how clever or persistent, could ever truly take away from us."